Peace to the family. All right, today I want to talk about a story that's been pretty much in the headlines and viral for the past 4 or 5 days. It's about Shadeur Sanders, son of Deion Sanders, and the things that have progressed in terms of his being drafted into the NFL. Okay, to be totally transparent with you, I really do not follow NFL football anymore. I haven't followed it since Colin Kaepernick. On rare occasions, I may uh, pop in and watch a little piece of the game with my mom, but generally, I don't watch it. But with all things on my channel, I generally stick to the parameters of the Code by Neely Fuller Jr. And this is going to fall into the category of sex, entertainment, and probably a little law. The law will be basically dealing with the fact that the NFL owners may have participated in collusion, really what we would call in the black community blackballing, right? Okay. But I'm gonna give a big shout out to Don Lemon on this subject, because out of all the responses that I've heard, I think Don Lemon handles it the most genuinely. So I want to say big up to Don Lemon on that one. And I'm going to go into some of the subtleties of why I think Don Lemon was so poignant in his analysis of the situation. Okay. All right. First things first, I was having a conversation with a dear friend and brother of mine about the subject. And we took it back to Jackson State. Jackson State is a historically black college that plays in the SWAC, Southwestern Athletic Conference. Southwestern Athletic Conference for years has put many pro athletes into the NFL and all dispensations of sports, period. Okay, so a few years ago, Deion Sanders took the head football coaching position at Jackson State, and he took his sons and Travis Hunter to Jackson State. He stayed at Jackson State for 2 years, and then he went on to the University of Colorado. But I would have liked to have seen Deion Sanders enter into the annals of historic black college and university coaches and legends. I would have loved to see his name with Big John Merritt of Tennessee State University, legendary Jake Gaither of Florida A&M, the one and only Eddie Robinson of Grambling State University. And I don't want to just limit those names to football in particular. I would have loved to seen his name alongside Big House Gaines of Winston-Salem State, Ed Temple of Tennessee State, and Tiger Bell fame, right? But he did not do that. He had his reasons. But he started a trend where former black football greats would go on to become head coaches at historically black colleges and universities. Ed Reed was on his way to Bethune-Cookman and some things happened. Eddie George was at Tennessee State University. He turned the program at Tennessee State University around, right? But Deion went on to greener pastures, I would suppose, in his opinion, at Colorado. But a friend of mine, we were talking, we say, well, you know, being drafted 144th in the draft, he could have stayed at Jackson State, you know, and probably went higher. You know, Jackson State, probably the most famous alum, NFL alum would be Walter Payton, the great, the sweetness himself, you know, number 34, Chicago Bears, one of the greatest to ever do the game, as well as Shadeur Sanders being one of the greats to ever do it. But this didn't happen. And when it first happened, I thought about old Clarence, Supreme Court Justice, and he said it was a high-tech lynching that they were doing to him. You know, and I think about what they did to Shadeur Sanders. It was like they hung the father and the son on the old rugged cross. You know, the KKK burned the cross. And I think that's basically what they did. They had a ritual. And they ritualized the buck breaking of two men. Shadeur Sanders, well, more than two. Shadeur Sanders, Shiloh Sanders, Travis Hunter, and Shadeur Sanders. Shadeur basically was a, you know, stand-up guy. Didn't get in much trouble, performed well in school and on the field, right? Had he been a different color, it would have been a different story at all. And I think Don Lemon points this out very well in his article and on his YouTube station. So go over and check out Don Lemon on this subject. All right. So again, when we talk about the black man's body and the black woman's body as well, because that's where we come from. We come from the womb of a black woman. But our bodies are to be inspected, poked and prod, and held to a scrutiny that goes back to the auction blocks of slavery. Anywhere in the world, the black body was examined to a degree of perfection. And you saw this with Shadeur Sanders. They said, oh, well, he's not tall enough. He's not fast enough. All sorts of ridiculous claims. But it goes back to the coveted position of quarterback in the NFL. They don't think that black men are intellectually capable of being the leader of another 10 people on the team, right? So it has a lot to do with that in terms of why Shadeur Sanders was being scrutinized to the degree he was scrutinized. If you can run the football, dunk the basketball, that's fine, but in terms of leading the team, they want to reserve that position for white men. All right. It's something that was surprising about this whole fiasco is the position that Donald Trump took on this. Donald Trump is about that money, and he's about people that support him, right? And allegedly, Shadeur Sanders supports Donald Trump. And Donald Trump basically said, let me pull the quote up. In his post on Truth Social, Donald Trump said, "What is wrong with NFL owners? Are they stupid? Shadeur Sanders was a great college football player and was an even greater in the NFL. He's also a very good coach, streetwise and smart. Therefore, Shadeur, his quarterback's son, has phenomenal genes and is all set for greatness. He should be picked immediately by teams that want to win. Immediately. By a team that wants to win. Good luck, Shadeur, and say hello to your wonderful father." All right? Wonderful genes. All right? Go back to that slave block. Go back to that auction block, right? Subtly is what he's saying, right? So this black body, that's torn between greatness and filthy rags, right? Along with those two imposters triumphed in tragedy. That's where that black body lies, right? And all to be controlled by someone outside of that black body, being manipulated by a white supremacist system, right? This is what my issue becomes with sports. Sports is great. It teaches many lessons in life, camaraderie, teamwork, togetherness, loyalty, discipline. But that's not what it's about now. It's about that bag, right? Even Francis was buried with a bag of coins, right? Just like Judas. He took that bag of silver, right? Those 30 pieces of silver. And basically, people have sold their souls and have entered into fanaticism. You're a fan of the game. You're a fanatic for it, to the point where even at your own detriment, you won't put it down. It's more lethal than fentanyl. I heard black men saying, well, he needs to be humble. Shadeur needs to be humble. But when you hear the swagger of a gunslinging quarterback who just happens to be Caucasian, it's a positive quality. But in a black man, it's criminal. And I think, what did Donald Trump say? Streetwise, right? But it's streetwise with, Archie Manning and dealing with his sons, Eli and Peyton. Damn Elon Manning, Elon Musk, damn him. But no disrespect to Archie and his boys. You know what I'm saying? I don't have no problem with them. Peyton made up for what he lacked in physical gifts with just being a student of the game. Nothing wrong with being a student of the game. But that doesn't mean that Shadeur Sanders is not a student of the game, that he puts his time in terms of studying and a review of films, But Shadeur Sanders being streetwise and instructing his son, whereas Archie Manning instructing his sons and advocating for his sons, that's a savvy business person. You see the double standard, right? And along in the background of this time, We have Carmelo Anthony in a town not far away from where Deion Sanders played football. I mean, Deion started his career in Atlanta with the Falcons and also with the Atlanta Braves, right? Two-star athlete. But he also played at Dallas with the Dallas Cowboys, right? But this town, Frisco, is not far from Dallas. And a young man stabbed a Caucasian boy after being a to-do at a track meet, right? Let me weave this in. It may be coincidence, but I was watching the NBC or the ABC, the nightly news, and when they showed the Shadeur Sanders saga of him being drafted, or him being pranked, that's another thing that going on with this. One of the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinators his son got the number of Shadeur Sanders and pranked him during this draft thing. And the quarterback of Ole Miss was drafted by New Orleans. But the guy called Shadeur and told him that he was going to be drafted. He pretended to be from the personnel of New Orleans and told him that he was going to be drafted by New Orleans, right? But anyways, on NBC, on this news, the one with David Muir, so whichever one that is, after they showed the story of Shadeur Sanders being pranked, the next story was about a paramedic in Kansas City being stabbed to death. I don't know if it's a coincidence or if it was synchronicity, but I just particularly found it odd, right? But also during this period, you had Shannon Sharpe, who basically at the beginning of last year, he crashed the internet in terms of views with the interview with Cat Williams. But Cat Williams and Monique basically was telling this guy about dealing with white women, right? So Shannon Sharpe basically is being extorted by a young white girl for about $50 million, right? So all of that has to play in the situation in terms of this black male body, you know, that they want to humble, that they want to castrate, but they also want to extract the greatness and monetize that greatness, you know, on the gridiron, on the football field, on the hardwood, on the diamond, you know what I'm saying, on the oval, on the greens. Any sport, black people dominate, you know, so white people want to monetize that, you know. So, again, big up to Don Lemon for just concisely saying it, that America has to deal with this white supremacist past and how it affects the whole nation in terms of those 9 areas of people activity, and the 10th being health, right? And the whole notion of the hypersexualized black man, right? I think it was very poignant coming from Don Lemon, who people ostracize him because of his sexuality. So I think that it was very transcendental that he broke it down to everybody in the family could relate to this story, you know. So again, I wanted to say it. In my opinion, Don Lemon gave a very, very poignant and succinct analysis of this situation. And, I personally thank him and thank others that gave their synopsis of it. One more quick thing. I also want to big up Willie D for bringing out the comments of the legendary wide receiver Chris Carter and how he went in on Deion and how Deion was messing his son up. So, there's some things out there on the internet that you can, glean some information from. But this is just my little take on it. That I say peace. You know what I'm saying? I hope that you learn something and you live your day out fully. Because a day without learning is really a day without living. That I say peace to the family.